Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the God TV radio live stream. My internet connection was a little wonky there at the very beginning of the stream, but it seems like things are starting to work a little better. If they don't, we'll just have to turn off the cameras because that seemed to be alleviating the problem earlier. But as you can see, I am TTOR. We got Brett Keene here at the bottom. And we got Sal to my, I guess what would be my left. And say hello to the audience, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, folks, I'm happy to be here. Two wonderful people, some exciting stuff coming. Yay!
Indeed. So, the way that this particular stream is going to work is that Brett and I are going to be muted and off screen, and Sal's going to have the floor, and he's going to spend about 35 to maybe 40 minutes talking about genetic entropy and how that basically is evidence for a young Earth and necessitates the need for Jesus to come back before we literally just fall apart due to genetic entropy. So I'll let Sal introduce himself properly after I give him the floor. Go ahead and take it away, Sal.
Greetings, everybody. I'm Sal Cordova. I'm a molecular biophysics researcher. Glory and honor to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Tomorrow is going to be Darwin Day, because Darwin's birthday. And so I think this is appropriate to kind of just stick it to him. He had a terrible theory, and I'm going to show why tonight. His theory doesn't work as advertised, and this isn't me saying it. A lot of my work has been to, over the last 7 years, was actually just see what evolutionary biologists themselves have had to say about this. So I'll introduce myself as we go through these slides. My life story is in the cover story of the prestigious scientific journal Nature, April 28, 2005. This is the #1 scientific journal. This was an answer to prayer. The article said, the journal contains material on evolution. Evolution by natural selection is a theory, not a fact. This material should be approached with an open mind, studied carefully, and critically considered. They actually were being kind of sarcastic when they put that on, but I think God had a sense of humor. And the cover story is intelligent design coming to your campus. I had prayed. I nearly left the Christian faith 20 years ago. And I said, Lord, I need something other than the Bible to reassure me that the Bible is true. So during that time, a lot of people would just, it's like, why should I believe the Bible? And they'll say, well, look, it says right there, it's God's word. And just like, anyone could say that. That doesn't mean it's true. And so I nearly left the faith. I had bouts of agnosticism. And I was like, my dad was dying. And I'm like, Dad, why, God, why I'm praying so hard? And he's a good guy. And why is he terminally ill? And Dad eventually passed away. And, okay, maybe I'll shut my camera off. So I said, Lord, why'd you let Dad pass? And I began to have doubts. And I said, the only thing that I could continue doing was science. And I said, okay, I'll start from science, maybe an independent witness. It says in John 10:38, Jesus said, if you can't believe in me, believe the works. If you can't believe in me, believe the works. And I was like, that's interesting. I could study the works. I could study the works. And that's what I did. And I prayed. People prayed for me. I had doubts. And the book of James says, if you have doubts, don't expect that God's going to hear your prayer. And I said, I'm kind of stuck. But I asked people in my prayer group, I said, I'm about ready to walk out of the faith. And I remember it said, confess your sins, your faults before one another, and you'll be healed. It also says the effectual prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And I said, if God won't hear my prayers, he'll hear the prayers of a righteous man. And he will also hear the prayers of his people. And so it was a 2-year healing process. I had the chance to study intelligent design and creationism, and I said, this is evidence there is a God, there is a designer. Abiogenesis theory, evolutionary theory is false. There had to be a creator. And so the world looks intelligently designed, but with all the pain we have in the world, it's obviously cursed, just as the Bible taught. And I said, God, I'd like a chance for my story to be told to the world. I'd like for it to get national attention. And, I don't know why I prayed that prayer, but 3 months later, I got contacted by a reporter from this journal. And so the number one journal in science, a young earth creationist, ends up in the cover story. So this was the cover story, and this is the title of the story. And you could see here, it even mentions my name, Salvador Cordova's Intelligent Design Group. And there's my picture. So God answers prayers. Now, after my dad died, I took care of my mother, and by a set of circumstances, God had me take care of her for 18 years until from 2003 to 2021. And I ended up leaving a very cushy job as a senior engineer at MITRE Corporation, MIT Research and Engineering, in the aviation industry. And I was able to take care of her, but I needed a job. And Dr. John Sanford, he gave me a salary to work on creationism and to do research for him. Let me tell you about Dr. Sanford. That was him in his younger years, from left to right, over the years. The device you see him with is the gene gun. He is a Cornell research professor. That's a very prestigious position, and that's an Ivy League school. His invention now is in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. He was an atheist. He then became a Christian at age 39. At age 49, he also became a young earth creationist. God worked in his life, and he dedicated himself to the Lord. After he became a Christian, he said, I'm going to use my science to glorify God. And so the gene gun result is in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. That's because billions, as in with a B, billions of people, billions of starving people were fed through his gene gun process. He's a wonderful man, very kind and generous. He gave me a job so I could work from home to take care of my widowed and disabled mother 24/7, but then I could just do research in my own home. God bless him for that. That is who I worked for. He is a great role model for Christian creationists, Christian apologists, and Christians in general. And that is also that's the gene gun at the Smithsonian Museum. He's joined by a lot of people don't know, they're really elite scientists that are young earth creationists. They're just not in the limelight. John Sanford's one of them. There are also some others. I've worked with Change Laura Tan and Rob Stadler. These are people worth emulating. I could talk more about them, but in the interest of time, just moving on. Dr. Sanford, after he became a Christian and creationist, he published in the Journal of Mathematical Biology. It set records for the number of downloads. Now, this is the math in it, but it began, the thing was, this was showing how Darwinism fails. He was the lead author. Bill Basner there is a mathematician, an emeritus professor in mathematics. And this led them, and just imagine these creationists got the number one article in a secular biology journal. That led to Bill Basner speaking, being invited, an ID-friendly guy to be speaking, addressing other biologists. And Dr. Sanford had the chance to speak at the National Institutes of Health in the Mazur Auditorium. that auditorium is reserved for dignitaries like the President of the United States, etc. And Dr. Sanford, the red carpet was rolled out for him. Even though he was a young Earth creationist, because of his stature as a scientist, he earned the right to talk, to tell it like it is. And he had a very nice reception among some of them. So you had your usual riffraff that didn't like what he had to say, but that's okay. So we eventually, because he was so successful with that article in the journal Mathematical Biology, we later on refined his genetic entropy hypothesis, which we'll talk about today, and it got into a Springer Nature reference work. This is a work that is critical of evolutionary theory, and it is on university library shelves of secular universities. We've gotten a beachhead here, and I had the privilege of working with some top guys on this. Alla Hodster is a Christian and an award-winning mathematician, professor of population genetics in Sweden. All of the co-authors here, my co-authors, Bill Basner, Alla Hodster, John Sanford, model Christians and model scientists. And the book we published in retails for $1,500. You can buy it directly, but don't buy it on account of me. I don't get a dime. The publisher does. You can get it at discount from Walmart. And I'm going to cover that a little bit today. So, a lot of evolutionists will just say, you can't do biology without evolution. That's not true. The fact that we have scientists or creationists publishing in secular peer review in biology proves that. That's just totally false. In fact, the author Jerry Coyne of the book Evolution, Why Evolution is True, even he conceded in science's pecking order, evolutionary biology lurks somewhere near the bottom, far closer to the pseudoscience of phrenology than to physics. So take that, all ye people celebrating Darwin Day. The guy was a loser. Sorry to say that. Anyway, what we'll cover today proceeds from this equation, and don't be frightened. I'm going to try to make this accessible as possible, but this is for just the people that, think, who may suspect that, who may accuse me of being kind of shallow. You want to fight the math with me? I'm here to fight you. But let me just summarize it from an evolutionist's own words. This is an evolutionist named Michael Lynch. This is the destiny of the human race. From an evolutionary biologist. He says, it remains difficult to escape the conclusion that numerous physical and psychological attributes are likely to slowly deteriorate in technologically advanced societies. The incidences of a variety of afflictions, including autism, male infertility, asthma, immune system disorders, diabetes, already exhibit increases exceeding the expected rate. This observational work may substantially underestimate the mutational vulnerability of the world's most complex organ, the human brain. Because human brain function is governed by the expression of thousands of genes, the germline mutation rate to psychological disorders may be unusually high. At least 30% of individuals with autism spectrum disorders appear to acquire such behaviors by de novo, that is new, mutations. It has been suggested that there has been a slow decline in intelligence in the United States and the United Kingdom over the past century. In other words, we are getting sicker and dumber and sicker. This is another title here. Genomes decay despite sustained fitness gain. So Darwinian evolution says survival of the fittest. The fittest are basically the ones that reproduce the most. But it turns out the ones that reproduce the most are also decayed genetically. They lose versatility and capability. They end up being very specialized. And maybe if we have a question and answer, I can address some of this. How can Darwinism fail? They keep saying survival of the fittest. It seems inevitable. Well, I'll show you why. Suppose, in Darwinian evolution, we're supposed to have these healthy individuals and then some sick individuals. And natural selection, the idea is it's going to get rid of the bad and keep the good. So let's just kind of see how a lot of evolutionists think this works. So let's say we have perfect selection and we have natural selection as represented by the Terminator. And he says, hasta la vista, baby. And he's going to get rid of the defective mutant. I know that sounds harsh, but this is evolutionary theory. And what ends up happening is the good are left and the good go on to reproduce. So it seems like this is inevitable progress. Well, not so fast. Survivors become parents of the next generation. Again, this is the way they think of it. But there is a catch. Suppose every individual has a defect that their parents didn't have. It doesn't have to be a big defect. It could be very subtle. It just has to be enough. And if they're all defective, you can't eliminate all of them. That won't work. So let's just say you eliminate maybe the worst. The problem is this will lead to deterioration. The species survives, but each generation is dumber and sicker. And that's borne out by the evidence. So we have this theory of natural selection. I'm just showing you Darwin was wrong. It's right there. Look at this. He never considered this scenario. And that's one of the many reasons he's wrong. He's wrong for many reasons. This is just one of them. And this is confirmed by experimental evidence like I had just covered. And some evolutionists have noted this problem. And there is this project, it's a $500 million to $1 billion project at this point called ENCODE. And they found out the genome has a lot of function in it. And that if you have a lot of function, that means more things can go wrong. And so this evolutionary biologist named Dan Grauer said, if ENCODE is right, then evolution is wrong, because that means that every generation is guaranteed to have more defects than the prior generation. It's just going to keep going worse and worse. So keep that in mind. If ENCODE is right, evolution is wrong. And I may cover that a little bit more. So let's just reiterate how this may happen. So let's just say we have, even hypothetically, we have a perfect ancestor that had no defects. And Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer said survival of the fittest. It would seem that this would guarantee that there's not going to be any problems. So the numbers you see there, 0 indicates the number of defects. So this hypothetical ancestor has no defects. But then this ancestor has kids. And the numbers there indicate how many defects they have. So some have only 60, some have 100. Now, these are very minor. They may not be very noticeable, but they, just like when your car is, you're driving your car, each time you drive your car, you lose a little bit of tread on your tire. So any given day, it may not look like you've lost that much, but you're gradually losing a little bit. So these defects are very small and imperceptible, but they can accumulate over time. So let's just apply survival of the fittest. Well, the first problem is that the most fit is the parent. And unfortunately, the parent dies. So much for survival of the fittest. Let's take the fittest of the kids, which would be the one with only 60 defects. And we kill the rest, keep the best and toss the rest. And then this survivor goes on to be a parent himself. And the next generation, we kind of repeat the process. More defects are added to the genome, and we'll repeat the process. We keep the best, toss the rest. And you could see that survival of the fittest does not guarantee improvement. So there you go. When they say this is easy to understand, Richard Dawkins and all the evolutionists is like, no, you could see it here. No one contests me on this. This is, by the way, I didn't come up with this. The evolutionary biologists who are a little bit more thoughtful, like, oh, I think we need to think this a little bit more carefully. And they actually had the integrity to actually publish on this. And Dr. Sanford was very attentive to this. And I worked on this problem too, to help dig some of this up. So we're just going to keep repeating this over the generations. And let's fast forward to 1 million generations later. And it's just really awful, just full of defects. And so they said, well, how do we get around this? Because obviously we're alive. And they said, well, we'll just assume that most of the genome is junk. And therefore only a little bit is functional. Therefore you could have all these changes in the genome and they won't result in real defects. They're just, that was junk anyway. You had nothing to lose anyway. And so they said maybe, 98% of the genome is junk, only 2% works. And that ended up being wrong. And let me just read this evolutionary biologist, because he said, obviously the genome has to be junk. And this is what he had to say. He said, studies have shown that the genome of each human newborn carries 56 to 103 point mutations. That is a defect. We can call it a defect. Colloquially, the formal word is mutation. Let's colloquially, approximately call it a defect. 156 to 103 point mutations that are not found in either of the two parental genomes. If 80% of the genome is functional as trumpeted by ENCODE Project Consortium, then 45 to 82 deleterious mutations, that is birth defects, arise per generation. For the human population to maintain its current population size under each of these conditions, each of us should have on average 3 times 10 to the 19th to 5 times 10 to the 35th power children. This is how many children you need, so many zeros. And he said this is clearly bonkers. And Dr. Sanford, a young earth creationist, noticed that. People have been saying Sanford's wrong. It's like, well, hang on. Evolutionary biologists have said that. We're only the messengers of what they themselves are having to admit, they themselves. And Dan Grauer said it's going to be this enormous number. And even if we use Dan Grauer's optimistic numbers, you still need 44,000 offspring per female. And let's see if I highlight that even right there. Yeah, so that's the bonkers number of Grauer, but whatever an optimistic number we have, it's we can't get around the fact we're deteriorating. So he said if ENCODE is right, then evolution is wrong. ENCODE turns out to be right. As we study the genome more, it is functional beyond our dreams. And that is very bad news for evolution. So unhappy Darwin Day. Now, evolutionary biologists don't like reality, and they just take their anger out on people that disagree with them. In this case, Dan Grauer got mad at the researchers who discovered this, who aren't creationists themselves. They are researchers trying to find cures for cancer. He didn't like the results. He started calling them these names. He said they're ignoramuses, crooks, the scientific equivalent of Saddam Hussein. And he called Francis Collins a creationist director. This is the vitriol being spewed by evolutionary biologists against other scientists who aren't even creationists. And it's breaking out in universities. Evolutionist Joe Felsenstein versus a fellow researcher at his own university. These arguments are breaking out because the implications are evolutionary theory is wrong. If the biomedical researchers are correct, evolution is wrong. They don't want to come to terms with it. And we have evolutionary biologists themselves giving these headlines. Why have we not died 100 times over? Why have we not died 100 times over? They're perplexed. We should be all dead by now. We can't figure it out. And they note that our genome is crumbling. Alexei Kondrashov here is a colleague of my professor at the NIH. I mean, senior guys. This is a researcher at Oxford, Brian Sykes. He's noting that the human genome is deteriorating. He's predicting a future without men. And these are evolutionary biologists. We can have quote after quote, and I'm just going to just flash them briefly here. We're not going to read them all. Just suffice to say, there are many, many of them. Look at all these researchers. These are all evolutionists. everyone here is an evolution except Dr. Sanford. And one of them, the one who came up with this, won the Nobel Prize studying the topic of birth defects. He's the one who came up with this insight that we could be all falling apart. He won the Nobel Prize because he was studying birth defects. What evolutionists try to say, oh, this is a young earth creationist theory, it's been discredited. Absolutely not. It has not been discredited. The evolutionists are aware of it. They don't know what the solution is. They keep hoping a future discovery will figure it out. I don't think they'll figure it out because this is reality, and they are fighting against the facts. And I was in a debate. I asked with Dr. Dan Stern-Cardinale, I asked, can you name one scientist that thinks our genome is improving? And he kind of didn't give an answer. I mean, do you think intelligence is increasing? Do you think juvenile diabetes is decreasing? Do you think there's going to be a lowering of the frequency of allergies, myopia, dental problems, juvenile cancers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I talked to a researcher. I was at a conference. I said, she asked, why are you here? I said, I'm concerned about the decaying genome. I said that in so many words. And she said, that's very interesting. We're seeing an increase of juvenile onset in cancers. And she said, I'm seeing it in my own research. So let me go back to a quote here. Why have we not died? Why have we not died 100 times over? Under evolutionary assumptions that we evolved from some ancestor over millions of years, we should not have evolved. We should be dead 100 times over. This is not some creationist saying that. This is something he is perplexing over, and he can't grasp why. Well, maybe life is recent. Okay, there's some old earth creationists out there, and I know Brett is one of them. And I was an old earth creationist. So let's just focus on human life. Can we accept maybe human life was created miraculously not too long ago? Because the evolutionists are seeing over millions of years we should be dead. Each of us has an expiration date. We will die. But it's turning out so does civilization. It has an expiration date. It is written in our genomes. Just like it is written in our genomes that we will die, it's looking like it's written in our genomes that the human race will die. And Jesus said, this world is passing away, but his words abide forever. And the answer to maybe why we're not dead 100 times over is maybe humanity hadn't been around that long. But that's off the table because that would give credence to a literal reading and a literal interpretation of Luke chapter 3, and a literal interpretation being affirmed would also affirm that, hey, maybe the Gospels, maybe the whole Bible is actually the Word of God, that it is recording history and so many other things accurately because this proceeds from the Word, from God himself. This is the Word of God. So I asked this question, and you can ask it around. So if you think I'm making this up, you can ask. Now, Michael Behe, he believes nominally in common descent and an old earth, but he surveyed a lot of what we call experimental evolution experiments, where we take bacteria and just kind of evolve them in the lab. And he noticed most of the things that they call natural selection were actually destruction of the genome, that genomes of the bacteria were actually breaking things in order to survive. This is like, let's say, blowing up bridges, or, if the boat's sinking, you try to get rid of the cargo to help you stay afloat. This is not like generating truly new function. Most of the changes to the genome that we call mutations are actually birth defects. So again, this does not work the way that Darwin envisioned, and happy Darwin Day to you, all evolutionists. Darwin's theory was wrong. It was a disaster, and it has caused a lot of people's faith to be destroyed, and it was bad science. So Behe wrote the book Darwin Devolves. Just as a side note for you aficionados out there in biology, Michael Behe had pioneered the discovery of zDNA, the zDNA. This is a big deal. He's known for intelligent design work, but he's a first-rate scientist in the study, the biophysics and biochemistry of DNA. He's one of the pioneers of discovery of zDNA. So he's a good scientist. And we have, this again, our experiments are showing that even bacteria are their genomes are decaying. Everything's decaying. Nothing works the way Darwin claims. In general terms, there could be a few exceptions here or there, but it's like that occasional person who will have a lucky day in the casino, but over the stretch of time, he will be a net loser. And that's how real evolution works. It is devolution. Behe uses the word devolves. It is devolution. So let's briefly cover why most mutations are damaging. We have basic evolutionary theory, the idea of common descent from a single microbial ancestor. That's the general theory. Let's assume that, just for the sake of argument, you guys know I'm a creationist, but let's just assume that for the sake of argument. That would mean that the squirrel there that's munching on the strawberries, the squirrel munching on his cousin. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself. It turns out, though, that the parts, even if we assume that we all descended from the same microbial ancestor, all the parts that make us up don't descend from a common ancestor. These are proteins here. We're made up of a lot of proteins plus lots of other chemicals, but proteins are the groundwork as far as the machinery of life. These are a variety of proteins that I've studied. Going left to right, that's a zinc finger protein, a potassium ion channel, tetrameric potassium ion channel, homohexameric helicase, a homodimeric topoisomerase, that is a heterotrimeric collagen, and a homodimeric insulin receptor. Complex machines. You could tell that their shapes are different, but they can't evolve from a common ancestor. And instead you have like an orchard, which suggests special creation. Now, I have on tape Dr. Dan agreeing with me that all the parts of life evolved independently. Even though he's an evolutionist, he agrees with that. Now, I don't have time to get into how he arrived at that. And anyone really interested, we can go there. Aaron Ra, when I debated him, when Cindy Lincoln was my partner, we debated Aaron Ra and Dr. Chris. Aaron Ra couldn't believe it at first. And he consulted Dr. Dan, who's an evolutionary biologist. After that, Aaron Ra comes back to me and says, "You're stupid, Sal. There's no effing common ancestor for all proteins." I'm just like, dude, that's exactly my point. You're acting like, you're acting like that wasn't my point. That's your problem. Don't you see it? There's no common ancestor for all proteins. There he is, Aaron Ra. I mean, the guy just thick as a brick. Couldn't get that this is problematic for evolution. There it is. He says, there's no effing common ancestor for all proteins. That was in October 2023 or so. I got his permission to publish this. And there are peer-reviewed papers that go into this. We don't need to go into this. Anyone really interested in the mechanics of this, I'll give you kind of the intuitive reasons why. Geometry is priority. Just think about that. Geometry is priority. So like we can think of the first car made by Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz fame. You see it at the bottom here. The design evolved over time, but you had still the similar basic design there. And you could see that, this gradually evolves by incremental stages. By the way, there's Danica Patrick there. on the left corner, and there's a dragster. I just think that's cool. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. But the parts of the car cannot evolve from a single common ancestor. Can you imagine? Okay, so we can imagine what the ancestral car might look like that ended up being conceptually the conceptual ancestor of all the other cars. But you cannot even do that in principle for the parts of the car. You have a gas tank, you have a tire, a piston, a spark plug, a radiator, a battery. Can you imagine one part that you're going to evolve and it will diversify? You just modify it in small increments, gradually evolve it to this. It's not going to happen. You can't, there's no way to preserve the basic geometry for the individual parts. And that's the problem. Now, granted, you can take a basic battery and you can, kind of modify it and make other batteries. But you can't go from a battery or some ancestor and make all the other parts of the car. And that also applies to the protein parts. You can't do that. It doesn't work. And just as an aside, these are Richardson-Rubin diagrams of the proteins. And you can see one looks like a nut, and I call that God-made. And it looks hauntingly like a man-made product. It's amazing. We have the principle of all or nothing. If you're missing parts with a radiator, it's just going to fail. So there's sensitivity to the parts for its functionality. That's an important feature. And so the idea is it's very easy to break something. Very easy to break something. And we're getting to kind of why, I'm sorry, this is from another presentation, why most mutational random changes will be defects. It's very hard to improve this to be something else. If you try to randomly change it, it's not going to improve to something else. It's just you're most likely to break it. Now, let me give you the topoisomerase. This is an enzyme that I've studied. It's a target of chemotherapy. The reason it's a target of chemotherapy is if you disrupt the way this thing works, it kills the cell. So chemotherapy tries to kill cells, especially cancer cells. Unfortunately, it gets a lot of healthy cells along the way, but it's kind of a last resort therapy for sometimes to get rid of cancer. You just try to kill as many cells as you can, and you hope you kill more cancer cells, far more than you kill healthy cells. And I will give a video of the topoisomerase. I got to publish with Joe DeWeese. Joe DeWeese is a young Earth creationist, another model Christian, another model creationist, another model scientist. He and I published together in creationist literature, and also he published in Nature, the #1 scientific journal. Here's another young Earth creationist publishing in mainstream science. And then, God bless him, and glory and honor to the Lord, I had the privilege of publishing with him in secular venues there. And hope to continue. So now let me show you what the topoisomerase does. And I'm going to play this, and hopefully it'll work, and the audio will work.
Let's consider what happens as DNA unwinds during replication. As DNA unwinds, it acts like this rope when we pull apart its two strands. As you pull the strands apart, twisting tension builds up in the rest of the coiled portion. It is actually adding one twist to the remaining rope for each twist pulled out of it. At some point, you can't separate the strands anymore. The remaining rope is too tightly twisted. If you relax your tension on the rope, it will twist around itself in a supercoil. It is releasing tension. If you want to keep pulling the rope apart, you have to release the tension periodically, and one way to do this is to cut the rope and splice it back together. This problem has been best characterized in small circular DNAs. There are two methods of dealing with this problem in DNA. One cuts only one strand of the DNA double helix, and the other cuts both strands. Let's look at the first. Topoisomerase I enzymes cut a single strand of the double helix, pass the other strand through the cut, and reseal the break, relaxing the overwound molecule, which now has one fewer twist. Topoisomerase II enzymes do the same thing but with both strands of the double helix. Topoisomerase II cuts both strands of a double-stranded DNA and passes another double strand through the break and then reseals the break. So if a molecule of DNA is supercoiled, topoisomerase II can remove the supercoiling, 2 twists at a time, to yield a relaxed circle.
And this is a rendering of the topoisomerase enzyme. I'm going to try to let's back out here and just think, okay, let's say you had string that was tangled and you untangled it by using a pair of scissors and then you tape it back together. You have to untangle it. This is what this thing is doing to your DNA when the DNA gets tangled. This is life critical. If it's not able to untangle, you die. And or the cell dies. Now, the topoisomerase is made of 2 parts, and so it's like this pair of scissors. Obviously, it acts like a pair of scissors. So what is the problem for this evolving? Well, if you have a topoisomerase, then the only thing it can do is to cut, but it doesn't untangle and then reconnect. Well, it's just going to shred the genome. And if it can untangle and reconnect, but it doesn't cut or locate where to cut or sense the knot, that's going to fail. There has to be a number of things all in place at the same time. And you could see it's very hard that you can't just evolve this to something else. If you just make random changes to the way this works, it's dead and it doesn't evolve. And Darwin is wrong. So let me now conclude. I'm going to read something. I'm going to stop my share here and I'm going to read something. And I'm going to take a risk and put my camera. Hopefully this is explaining why there's genetic entropy. The reason we haven't died 100 times over by now is maybe humanity is actually young. Just like we would deduce from a literal reading of Luke chapter 3, the genealogy of Jesus Christ. The other thing, this should be very sobering. Human civilization may not last long. Our only hope is in Jesus. We can't be thinking about, millions of years from now, humanity will just be doing wonderful things. Our lifetime as a civilization may be shorter than we think. We ought to be on our knees seeking after the Lord. I'm going to close my talk with something from the book Genetic Entropy by Dr. John Sanford. I will have the privilege of seeing him. He's expecting me to conference with him on this coming Wednesday. We're going to talk about maybe a new publication that he and I will co-author. There have been some developments that will improve the original book that he wrote in 2005. But from his 2005 book, he had this to say, and this is how I'll close my talk. He said, "When I was young, I accepted the fact that I was going to die and that all the people I loved were going to die. I accepted it, but it robbed me of joy, to say the least. I was taught that there was still one hope. The world was getting better. Science was advancing. Culture was advancing. Even mankind was getting better. Through our efforts, we could make the world a better place. Through evolution, we could evolve into something better. Through progress, we might eventually defeat death itself. Perhaps we might someday even reverse the degeneration of the universe. My personal hope was that I might in some small way contribute to such progress. I believe that this basic hope was shared to a large extent by my entire generation." One of my reviewers of my book told me that the message of this book is both terrifying and depressing. He suggested that perhaps I am a little like a sadistic steward on board the Titanic, gleefully spreading the news that the ship is sinking. But that is not correct. I hate the consequences of entropy, degeneration. I hate to see it in my own body, in the failing health of loved ones, or in the deformity of a newborn baby. I find it all absolutely ghastly, but also absolutely undeniable. Surely a real steward on the Titanic would have a responsibility to let people know that the ship was sinking even if some people might hate him for it. I feel I am in that position. Responsible people should be grateful to know the bad news so they can constructively respond to it. If we have been putting all our hope in a sinking ship, would it not be expedient to recognize this and abandon the false hope? It is only in light of that we can appreciate bad news. Only in the light of the bad news can we really appreciate the good news that there is a lifeboat. Even as we cannot create life, we cannot defeat death. Yet I assert there is one who did create life and who designed the genome. I do not know how he did it, but somehow he surely made the hardware. And
You might want to turn your camera off.
Okay. I do not know how he did it, but somehow he surely made the hardware, and he surely must have written the original software. He is called the author of life. Acts 3:15. I believe the author of life has the power to defeat death and degeneration. I believe this is the good news. It is my personal belief that Jesus is our hope. I believe that apart from him, there is no hope. He gave us life in the first place, so he can give us new life today. He made heaven and earth in the first place, so he can make a new heaven and a new earth in the future. Because he rose from the dead, we can be raised from death, even the death which is already enveloping us. In these profound yet simple truths, I believe there is a true hope. I believe this hope is unshakable because I believe it is founded on the one who is eternal. It is a hope that has withstood the attacks of time and the corruption of religion. It is a hope freely available to anyone who would receive it today. I humbly put before you this alternative paradigm for your consideration. Jesus is our one true hope. And that is how Dr. Sanford ended this book, and that is how I end my presentation today. Thank you for your kind audience. God bless you all.
Yay! That was actually a very good, informative presentation, Sal. I was very impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Now let me just send the link to the room out into the comments section so people can join us if they want. And there we go. Yeah, internet seems to be doing okay right now. So I will risk having my face on the screen and hopefully it won't break it.
Let me turn on some more heat in my room. I'll be right with you. 1 second.
Okay. Is that you, Brett?
Yeah, I've been listening and all that. The went in and grabbed me some food, but I can still hear everything. Got everything running through a powerful system. Good presentation, good discussion and all that. When Sal gets back, just so he can point this out for folks, what is the difference between cosmological entropy to that of genetic entropy for those out there who may not know? Good job there, Sal.
Thank you. Entropy in the thermodynamic sense is different than genetic entropy. Genetic entropy is kind of a colloquialism. So just use it as a figure of speech for deterioration. It's just kind of a, catchy title. So there is a difference. The formal entropy is just really complicated, and it really just deals with, heat flow and, heat. And this is different. How that term changed in meaning is just a whole nother can of worms I don't want to get into, but there is a difference. So just think of genetic entropy as just another way of saying deterioration.
All right, we got Cindy Lincoln in here too. I had a couple of questions for you, Sal. I'll only give one of them though, so that way Cindy can have a turn next.
Hi, Sal.
Hi.
You mentioned the ENCODE project earlier in your presentation, but you weren't able to go into any detail for the sake of the presentation on that subject. Can you give us a bit more detail about the ENCODE project specifically? Like, what was the project for? What were they trying to do?
Okay, so this had nothing to do with defeating evolutionary theory. That was not their goal. They want to understand how to cure cancer and other diseases that are related to the genome. That was their goal. And so when we mapped what the human genome was, all we did is we just know what the letters are. We don't actually know what they mean. And so the ENCODE project was trying to deduce what it meant. And it turned out that, oh my, as we found what it meant, it's like, it seems like almost every letter counts for something. This is like a password. Every letter kind of counts for something. If you get one wrong, it fails. Now, the genome can tolerate a lot of change, but it's more like a tire. It's like, you could kind of scrape a little bit of rubber off and say, hey, the car works fine, therefore I don't need that piece. And you can keep doing that. And you say, well, if you extend that logic, you'll say, well, then I don't need the tire at all. And it's like, that's stupid, And so what they realized is that it had function. And if you just disrupt it, you start to degrade it. And the evolutionary biologist realized, wow, 3 billion letters of DNA, 3.3 billion, something like that. If most of that is working, then when you have a change, that means it's going to be really easy to make a defect. So as I was going through how the parts of a car, you can't just randomly change the shape without breaking it. So the DNA is the blueprint for the proteins, for those protein parts. So if you change the spelling of the DNA, it's going to change how that protein has the way the blueprint of the protein. You change the blueprint, you end up making a mess of a protein because only a few defects can start to compromise the function. And so the analogy with car parts is pretty strong. I kind of terminated before getting deep into the weeds. I could show you more pictures, but so ENCODE realized, oh my goodness, when we start monkeying with little pieces of the DNA, it starts to change the way that the cell works and manages the protein. And this was really bad because it's like, oh, that means, since we have about 100 changes between parent and child on average, if it's mostly functional, then 99% of the changes are birth defects. And I showed that picture with the graveyards and all, and the Terminator. Every generation is going to be sicker and dumber by a little bit, much like the treads on a tire starting to wear out. And if people doubt me, look at what any top evolutionary biologist, ask them if they think we're getting smarter and if we're getting healthier. There's not a one. They know the score. So
yeah,
nice to see you, Cindy.
I can. Sorry for interrupting. I can concur with the people getting dumber part. It seems like just in my lifetime, like in the last 20 years, people have gotten so stupid that I've seemed to become an intelligent person by comparison. Because I used to feel really dumb growing up, and now it's like, now I seem like a genius compared to a lot of the idiots that are out there in the world.
So, Sal, can I try and summarize what you're saying? Originally, they actually thought 80% of the genome was junk, and therefore, if they're having all these deleterious mutations, it wouldn't matter as much.
Some evolutionary biologists, and the number is closer to like 98% was junk.
How could anybody think that?
Because they're evolutionary biologists.
Yeah.
Happy Darwin Day.
Well, and not only that, but let's say 80% was junk. How do you know it's not the 20% that's getting mutated? Which means you're impacting function.
Well, eventually, if you're just randomly changing things, you might get one mutation might land in that 20%.
I really liked your statement where you said, if you start making random changes to a functioning system, you're not going to improve it. You're going to break it.
Yeah, like duh. I mean, come on. It's so
I
obvious.
know. And I remember as a child, I saw, we're making medical advances, we're making technological advances, we're now able to fly and make phone calls. And so I said, well, then I guess, someday there will be heaven on earth. I remember as a child thinking that we were getting better. Somehow we need to break that connection between technological advance and genetic advance, evolution. The two one doesn't imply the other. A lot of people think that.
I mean, just think about it. Look at all that's happened with the advance of the internet and all our smart devices. Do you think the kids of this generation are smarter? I'm sorry to be cynical.
Well, as a teacher, I know that. I saw it. Who's ever heard of a pineapple allergy? I had a little girl with a pineapple allergy. And the kids are not strong. They're pale, they're skinny, they're weak, or they're obese. And their brains don't connect. They don't think as well.
There was something that Sal pointed out in the presentation. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it was really fascinating. It's the part where you're showing the decay rate. I mean, you literally, I don't know if you've noticed yourself, you obviously see the genetic entropy issue, but it almost shows a biological timer for existence. Did you guys see that?
Oh, and was that the part where he was showing the where he had like the parents and then all the children with the number of defects each one had and all that stuff? Or is this a different
It's
one?
the one where he shows the boxes and the numbers of the deterioration
Yeah.
to the
I
genetics.
couldn't follow that.
Yeah, I saw that. Like with each generation, the number of defects in the children just skyrockets.
Sal, can you put that up again?
Sure. Give me one moment. So this is why it's, as I work on the presentation, we can talk more.
I want a copy of those slides presentation. Some of it I couldn't follow, but some of it I could.
Yeah.
And I think.
Okay, so let me share my screen.
All right.
And I keep shutting off my camera because, this can be, we're having some internet issues, but we'll just try to bear with it. So apologies to the viewers. And thank you for forbearing. So the green represents a parent. Now, everyone will say it's supposed to be mother and father. Just for simplicity, we're just going to represent one parent. The math will still work out. All that complex math that was flashing earlier, that helps kind of get around those simplifications. I just wanted to say, when you actually model it correctly, you need all that math, but it's essentially what you're seeing here. So let's say you have a parent, and then the parent has the parent has several children, and the numbers indicate. So let's say hypothetically the parent has 0. It's ideal. Mm-hmm. All the children have a defect. And remember, the number that was cited by ENCODE is about 80, roughly around 80. That's the average. And what we call the Poisson distribution, it means some kid would have 60, some will have 100. But the average number will be 80. Mm-hmm. And this gets into why...
Mutations, deleterious mutations.
Right. I would say function compromising is a better word. So all the kids here, so each box represents a kid, right?
Mm-hmm. Tracking so far.
So Darwin's theory was, survival of the fittest. That phrase was actually coined by Herbert Spencer here, but then Darwin adopted it in his later editions of Origin of Species. He uses the word survival of the fittest. Okay, so let's see this work, if this really works toward improvement, survival of the fittest, right? So the first thing that happens is the one genome that was good is the parent. So already the survival of the fittest doesn't really quite work so well. It's the survival of the fittest among the kids. But among the kids, you have only, your best of all the bad has 60 defects. And so let selection kill all the worst. So we keep the best, which is this one on the left. We toss the rest. I'm glad you laughed at my little joke here with the atomic bombs. Yeah,
and in reality, what's going to do that? There's nothing that does that in reality.
That's another problem. So I'm being very generous in saying, let's assume that, the best is really kept. When we know random accidents, it could well be just that random accidents, you could end up with a guy with the worst. So lightning might hit these guys, or a lion chews them up randomly.
Lightning and lions don't look for numbers.
Right.
Lightning and lions could take out number 60.
Right. And so when you factor the fact that what we call it, selection doesn't work with 100% efficiency, actually far from it, this makes it even worse in reality. And did I come up with this? They keep trying to say this is John Sanford's nonsense. I'm just like, no, it's not. It's evolutionary biologists. So my job was to search the literature and find as many as I could, and there's so many. So they're giving the illusion on the internet and then also in the public sphere that this is a creationist theory because it's a nice scapegoat. It's a nice way to dodge the issue. But
and as we all know, creationists are always wrong, even if they're perfectly siding with the evolutionists say. Always.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is what they're doing on YouTube all the time. And they're going after my boss and just trashing him. And if they ever debate me, I'll say, guys, I'm going to quote your people. And then I'm going to ask you a question. You tell me one major geneticist, top geneticist that thinks we're improving. Name one. And they never are. Because all of them know the story. They are reluctant to give fuel publicly to the creationists, because if they start admitting it, they're going to see that their whole discipline is in peril, and they know it quietly in their heart. There's an insecurity there. They're hoping someone will come up with a solution and save their theory, and no one has stepped forward. In the meantime, they save face.
It's kind of like when they discovered that soft tissue inside of a T-Rex fossil in 2005, and they didn't have a story to explain how that fossil or how that soft tissue could be preserved over millions of years, because technically it shouldn't have been. So then they eventually came up with iron acting as a preservative theory in 2013 and thought that was going to explain the problem away. Problem was, in 2012, Mark Armitage found a non-fossilized Triceratops bone in the Hell Creek Formation in Montana that had the same soft tissue in it. And that just wrecked that whole theory.
Right. And it's gonna continue. All sorts of things are falling apart. By the way, on February 28th, I have another debate on the Big Bang. The Big Bang's falling apart, so cosmology's falling apart. And so let me just continue this, since Brett kind of liked this diagram here.
Well, it shows I don't know if other people out there are noticing this, but it's actually showing a very predictable biological breakdown. You could actually use this in order to do life. You know that there's nobody out there, TTR. If you were to ask anybody in the world, do you believe that you have a biological timer? And if they tried arguing with you, ask them, do you presuppose that some people might make it to 300 years old? No, everybody thinks that at the most they might get to 70, they might get to 100, things like this. We know that we have a biological timer no matter where we're at in the world.
Yep.
Well, and actually, Brett, you're saying that it's not just individuals, but the species has a biological, it has a mathematical limit.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
it's
human
not just
population.
that, but this is right here what he's showing, and Sal probably already realizes this, but this shows why when you go top down with the Bible, why that makes sense. People were healthier, they were genetically better, as where over time it starts being torn apart. It's basically bam. Go ahead.
Well, plus in Genesis, what you notice is that before the flood, on average, people were living to be over 900 years old, or some of them even closer to 1,000. But then, right after the flood of Noah happens, the average age just plummets through the ground like almost instantly, as far as history goes. And so that leads young Earth creationists like myself to conclude that there was some major environmental factors that changed that led to the reduction of their average age so rapidly. And yeah, most evolutionists wouldn't give that credence, but yeah, I think the entropy that we're seeing is something that was started after the flood happened.
After the fall of man, T2R.
Well, that too, but like the real like drop came after the flood, because even
Yeah.
before the flood, they were still living to be over 900 years old on average because of the conditions they had.
Yeah.
So this is a diagram of the age of the patriarchs.
Yep.
So like, if we go by the biblical literal interpretation, Luke chapter 3, so like this is the age of the patriarchs, and you could see the lifespan declines. I don't know why we don't have Adam and Methuselah here, but it has this gradual decay.
Yep. Looks like genetic entropy to me.
I know. I was going to say that looks like exponential.
We happen to know that one of the reasons that we as individuals age is there is genetic entropy even in our own cells. So as you are growing new skin or whatever, each cell is a little bit damaged from the prior. And so the reason that why is it the baby looks so nice and healthy when it's restarted? It's because its cells haven't been going through a lot of replication cycles. So the ovum eggs, like for example, that are in a healthy female were actually there when she was just a fetus, and it stays with her. It never replicates. It never goes through. It never adds mutations to it. It just stays there. But our cells, as we're developing from child to adult to older age, they keep going replication cycles. They keep adding more genetic mutations.
In other words, replication is like a copy machine. It gets worse each time.
Right. And so the aging process for individuals is now, you just port that to kind of at the population level of the entire human species. It's just kind of a little bit of a step. And every evolutionary biologist that really thinks carefully about, just like what I was showing, it's like, well, that's kind of unavoidable. And I'm like, yeah. And that's why that headline said, why haven't we died 100 times over? I'm just like, yeah, you guys are actually thinking critically for a change, and you're admitting it.
Some of those articles I wished we could have spent a little more time on.
Yeah.
How they came to that conclusion and how you can get that into simple language, because it seems like obviously there's not a lot of viewers on this because not a lot of people want to think this deep.
Yeah, that's true. That's why someone like John Sandford's ignored. It is a little deep, and he does, it is a topic we'd rather not think about. And
it's like calculus or trigonometry. Not very many people like that kind of stuff.
Well, they want to be entertained. That's just the way it is. And that's kind of the modern culture, and we get drowned out by all the voices out there. When Dr. Sandford one time gave an interview, only 30 views. And I'm like, he's one of the top geneticists on the planet, former atheist turned Christian turned creationist. And I'm like, well, who ends up getting all the attention and headlines among creationists? It's not
Does
him.
he have his testimony? Do I already have that?
It's on James Tour's.
Yeah.
James Tour interviewed him, and there's a brief testimony. I have it on my channel. Just look it up. He gave a testimony.
Yeah, I think I snagged it off your channel and
Do
put
you
it
want
in
to hear
my
it?
testimonies.
If you want me to play it, I could play it now.
Yeah, I want it to
How
be.
long is his testimony video?
7 minutes.
Oh yeah, just run it. Yeah, we got time.
Good question.
Because I haven't seen this, so I'd be interested to see that testimony as well.
It's only an audio recording.
That's fine.
By the way, he paid out of his own pocket to send me to school. He's just a stand-up guy.
Dang.
Now, he owned the patent to the gene gun. So a lot of genetically modified crops were through his gene gun process. Oh my, I can't believe I have so many.
Maybe if you type in his whole name, it'll show up quicker.
Yeah, let me try that.
No, I don't have it on my list.
Oh, there it is. All right, so
2018. Cool.
I do have William Murray. Oh my gosh, is that Madeline Murray's son?
We can't hear the video. I don't think you clicked the share audio button when you did screen share. Yeah, try clicking that share audio box and then play the video again.
Sal, you're muted.
All right, there we go. Now try that from the top, from the beginning of the video. Yeah. There we go. Perfect.
Copyright music.
I don't think so.
I'm Salvador Cordova. Welcome to another segment of Evidence and Reasons, a show where we explore evidence and reasons for the Christian faith. Cornell research professor Dr. John Sanford is a legendary applied geneticist. His invention, the gene gun, is responsible for creating a sizable fraction of all the genetically modified organisms on planet Earth. This picture is a picture of the young John Sanford with his gene gun. For his accomplishments, Dr. Sanford's work was featured in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. Sometime around August 1st, 2018, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on the last day of the 8th International Conference on Creationism, John Sanford granted me a rare public interview. In this segment, I'll share that 7-minute interview with you all. One highlight of the interview was when he said that while he was in high school, evolution theory destroyed the budding faith that he had. He became an atheist, but then Dr. Sanford found the Lord decades later, and then 10 years after his conversion to Christianity, he became a creationist. I hope all the viewers joining us today will be blessed as we hear Dr. Sanford's testimony. Greetings, I'm Salvador Cordova at the 8th International Conference on Creationism, and I'm here with Dr. John Sanford. John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
I am a geneticist, and I spent most of my career with Cornell University. And when I was at Cornell, I was involved with plant breeding, plant genetic engineering, and invented something that actually called the gene gun, a special biotechnology tool that let me take early retirement from Cornell. And so I've been able to, because of that blessing, which I think God gave me specifically so I could serve him better, I've been able to be involved in creation research. I call it biblical genetics, basically studying and validating scripture in terms of human origins. And so that's why I'm here at this conference today.
That's wonderful. My understanding is you're a creationist now. Were you always a creationist?
So I remember in high school telling my mom I didn't believe in God. I loved science, but the way science was being taught was designed to convince me that because science is true, God is not, basically. So before I graduated from high school, evolutionary theory had already destroyed the budding faith that I had at that time. And so I didn't come back to God until I was 39. I was saved when I was 39. So for the early part of my career, I was, radically committed to evolution. Not committed, and that's not quite the word, totally persuaded and totally convinced that I could understand everything in light of evolution. It was my religion. And it defined my goals in life and, the idea of promoting and advancing further evolution. And so it really became a stronghold in my life. And so salvation brought me back to the Lord, but it took another 10 years from when I was saved until I actually became a creationist, because that stronghold in my mind was not easily, didn't just go away when I started believing in God. And in the Cornell University environment, I didn't know anyone who believed in design or creation. And so if someone had asked me, do you believe in evolution? I'd say, well, what else is there to believe? So when I finally met some more conservative Christians outside of Cornell, they encouraged me to look into the other side. I said, what is the other side? And they gave me a few books to read. And as soon as I opened that material, I thought, okay, this is amazing. Why didn't I ever think of these things? And how could I spend decades in the university environment as a scientist and not have thought about these issues myself?
You have a book, Genetic Entropy. I've read it. Lots of people have read it. Can you, there are a lot of creationists who probably will be hearing this broadcast. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and what might interest them in it?
So when I became a creationist, I felt an obligation to use my science to better understand creation and to defend scripture. And so I started with my own field, genetics. And I remember when I was in graduate school, one of my professors said there's this one problem called genetic load, and where things should degenerate, not get better. And he said, I just can't figure it out. And I remembered that, and I go, I wonder what he was talking about. And I started to look into that. And I first discovered that there are numerous evolutionists who are geneticists and who realize there's a problem. And that, in fact, they say it seems that the human population is degenerating genetically, but their view as an evolutionist was, all we need is more natural selection. Kill off or let the weak die, and the strong survive, and that will reverse this problem of continuously accumulating mutations. Basically, all geneticists know we accumulate mutations. Most of the mutations are deleterious. Even with natural selection, most mutations just keep building up in our genome like rust on a car. So I spent maybe 15 years, the last 15 years of my life studying this issue of genetic decay, genetic degeneration. And the case for it is extremely strong. And so I wrote the book Genetic Entropy, making the case that this is, number one, clearly true, and number two, remarkably biblical. And number three, totally inconsistent with evolution. Because it became clear that accumulating bad mutations mean evolution is not going up, it's going down. It's reverse evolution. And so that was the basis for that book. And then we've updated it several times because the evidence just keeps mounting, supporting this basic theme that we are dying people in a dying world and that we need a savior.
Amen. And for our listeners, John's book is available at Amazon, and there's a really downloadable version if you speak Chinese and read Chinese on the Genetic Entropy website. John, thank you so much for your time, and God bless you.
Thank you very much.
That's amazing.
That's
We're
pretty
dying
impressive. Yeah.
people, and we need a savior.
Amazing video there, Sal. Go ahead.
But wait a minute. I heard Brett talking to Nick and Julie the other night, and he said that he's what did you call it? A nihilist?
Well, I got a couple different theological positions. I would love to be able to talk to you about it. I'm not sure TTOR would want to go off a topic, though. That would be up to the host.
Yeah, I'm not sure that
No. A nihilist means that death isn't a problem because you just disappear.
What are you okay with me responding there, TTOR? Or do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, to that, but then we should move on to that thing you were telling me about while that testimony was playing.
Well, an annihilationist believes that the soul will be basically annihilated. I have no idea how much suffering that causes and how long it actually takes for it to happen. I just don't believe in the Dante's Inferno concept of hell.
Yeah.
Well, and in Brett's defense, I am familiar with the passages in the New Testament where Jesus says that you shouldn't be afraid of man who can only destroy your body and then after that do no more. But you should be afraid of the one who can destroy both your body and your soul, which is God. And then we see in Revelation multiple passages that talks about a second death that occurs when we are thrown into the lake of fire after we're found not to be in the book of life. And the eternal conscious torment people have a logical problem, because if God eternally and consciously torments people, they'll never experience a second death, which would be the death of their soul. So logically speaking, it doesn't work that way, especially when you have Jesus referring to a second death of the soul, and you have the book of Revelation talking about a second death that occurs when human beings are thrown into the lake of fire. As a matter of fact, in Revelation, the only place where it talks about eternal conscious torment in relation to the lake of fire is when Satan and his demons are thrown in there. It has a completely different description of when humans are thrown in, and it's the second death. So in that sense, Brett is an annihilationist, I think, and biblically speaking, I am too, because I have not seen a convincing argument that refutes that as far as the Bible goes.
What about their worm shall not die, and what's that other verse? Gnashing of teeth or something.
Isn't that in Isaiah? I think it is.
No, it's several times in the New Testament. Jesus.
Well, I think if it is in the New Testament, it's like a quotation or reference to one of the Old Testament books that says the same thing, basically.
The annihilationists, there's annihilationists that have different views on the time period. In no way is it claiming that there is not some form of consciousness torment. Remember, you don't have a physical body anymore, so you don't have a nervous system to feel pain and suffering. So the pain that you're having is the regrets and the pain within your own mind that is literally suffering. So that could possibly be the concept of, as the body and everything's disintegrating, you have your gnashing of teeth. It doesn't say you're going to gnash your teeth until the end of time.
Right.
So you're
But
saying there is some kind of punishment, but that it won't be eternal?
I'll give you an example of something. Jesus uses words like eternal destruction and perish. He says, I do not wish for anyone to perish, or God does not wish for anyone to perish. However, whatever translation you got. Did you know that perish means to be ruined, damaged eternally, basically destroyed?
Yeah, but if somebody does wicked all their life and they're just going to go when they die to nothingness, then there's no punishment.
no, the punishment is that their soul is wiped out. That's what the second death is, that the New Testament talks about.
What does that
And
mean?
there's still
wiped out?
miserable suffering, SND. It could be that it takes millions of years before the soul's completely wiped out. We're not claiming that it's like 5 seconds you just vanish like David Copperfield. It could be extremely excruciating, and some.
Well, it could also be quick and excruciating at the same time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I don't think God is into eternally torturing people. If you violated his law and your name's not in the book of life, he's going to destroy you, and he's not going to prolong that kind of torture. Because when you look at the Torah law, for example, a lot of the civil punishments for a lot of the sins was death, and it wasn't necessarily, okay, torture that guy for 2 weeks and then kill him. No, it was, kill him or take stones and stone him to death. It wasn't a lengthy process as far as the method of execution that God had for all of the sins outlined in the Torah. So I'm thinking personally that the second death that people experience when they're thrown to the lake of fire, I think it's going to be similar. It's going to be horrible, it's going to be awful, but it's not going to last that long, and they're going to cease to exist.
I got one more thing for you too, Cindy, and I don't know if I brought this up with TTOR, but remember the Bible says that they will be thrown out of the presence of God. Now, how is that possible to happen with an omnipresent God who is everywhere? The only way that's logically possible is for you not to exist at all in order to be completely out of the presence of God. Does that make sense?
Well, yes. However, what about Lazarus, where Abraham's bosom, somebody in Abraham's bosom, and then Lazarus is looking up and saying, come and put water on my tongue, and if I have to stay here, then go tell my brothers.
That's the story Jesus told in Luke, right?
Not sure.
Well, I have a simpler verse. Matthew 25:46. Jesus says, and these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. The word eternal is both the same. So eternal punishment, the word eternal is ionas. And then righteous, for the righteous, one for eternal life, it's also the same word. So there you have kind of the symmetry there, eternal punishment or eternal life.
Right. And that's the point that's the point I was trying to make about Revelation, is in Revelation 20, when it talks about what happens when Satan and his demons are thrown into the lake of fire, it says that they will be eternally and consciously tormented, eternal punishment. But then when it talks about humans being thrown into the lake of fire, it doesn't say that they will be eternally punished. It says that they experience the second death. So that's why I get that theology and thinking from. It's from Revelation 20 at the Great White Throne Judgment, where it gives 2 different punishments for 2 different people groups that are both thrown into the lake of fire.
So I'm giving, I probably am sharing Cindy's orthodox view, eternal damnation or eternal life. And that comes from kind of a straightforward reading of Matthew 25:46.
Yeah, but I'd have to think about that more deeply in light of Revelation 20 in order to figure out what I feel about how that means. Because right now, that's hard to square away with what Revelation 20 plainly says about the Great White Throne Judgment. So I'd have to look at Matthew 25, I think 46 you said it was. I'd have to look at it myself and ponder it more deeply to try and figure out what I'm missing, you know, as
since
far
we're
as
going off topic
comprehension
here,
goes. Yeah,
can I interject something?
sure.
I went through some trouble to talk about good Christian role models like John Sanford, and I do lament that there are certain individuals on the internet that have made a convicted felon and convicted someone convicted of domestic violence as their role model. I'm like, why? Why? You have other. I can't believe the young Earth creationist community, as far as the YouTube culture goes, pursues. You know, when you're saying, yeah, you see the human civilization getting dumber, and just like, yeah, I kind of see it on the internet. Why is so and so, you know?
Yeah, but that seems to be the way of life, and not just the unbelieving world, but ours is the Christian world as well. It seems like the false teachers, you know, they get all the people following them, they get all the people listening to them, and everyone's just like, ooh, you're so great. But then when the person telling the truth comes along, generally speaking, they don't get any kind of following, and no one wants to listen to them, and you know, they're generally shunned by the larger population.
And so I'm sorry to I almost said something earlier in reference to all this, but I decided it'd be wiser to save it for the end. But you know, it says, I think it's in 2 Corinthians, they describe Paul as being contemptible in speech. He wasn't necessarily an eloquent speaker.
Right. And Moses had the same complaint too when God picked him.
yeah. And so this whole thing, and I got to say, you know, some guy who dresses up in a Superman outfit, his YouTube handle rhymes with standing and poop. I just call him Poop for short.
Yeah, that guy's cute, for lack of a better word.
Well, you made a really good
I was
point,
like,
Sal, about making a presentation and it only gets 30 views.
Yeah.
That's not the measure.
So now you heard Dr. Sanford talking, just very mild-mannered. If you didn't know that he was a famous geneticist, all these accomplishments, he did very well business-wise because he owned the patent to this genetic technology. So you can just imagine, I was just driving through the cornfields one day and just like, I think Dr. Sanford's, a lot of that corn was part of his invention. I mean, okay, go to the grocery. Okay, that's why he could afford to pay me out of his own pocket to do research and to pay me to send me off to school.
Because he got the boatloads of money from his invention.
And he said, Sal, I think God gave me this because he was going to put me on a mission to do this. But where was I headed with all this? I just wanted to say, you know, I was lamenting. Poop was taunting me. He said, it's just too bad you only got 4 views. You know, when we were talking, I was talking with Cindy here, and I'm like, that's not a measure of truth. But you know what? What goes around comes around.
Well, and what kind of a Christian would say something like that? Nanny,
so, anyway.
4 views?
And there's another thing that standing for truth does not consider, because it probably never occurred to him. There are a ton of other video sharing sites besides YouTube that have emerged in the last 6-7 years. And you can get a lot more than 4 views on that video on those sites simply because they don't have the same algorithmic suppression and censorship systems that YouTube does. So, yeah, just because something only gets 4 views on YouTube doesn't mean it wouldn't get a bunch of views on another site.
But you know what? That's more views on YouTube than Hovind is getting now.
Oh, boy. We got somebody out here called Kevin's Biblical Discussions. He said, death means separation from God. It doesn't mean cease to exist. Let me ask you something, TTOR. If God were to strangely and hypothetically disappear from existence, Since he is the very proponent and prime mover of life, wouldn't that mean everything that exists would also go out of existence?
Yes, because the book of Job specifically says that if God were to withdraw his spirit and breath, that we would all die.
So if that's the case, if you were to just think logically backwards on that, if you are separated from God, whether he's chosen to put you out of his existence, you die. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I just wanted to close out my thought. I just, I felt that it was important that Cindy have creationist Christians in her life to sustain her, because I just thank God you all came along beside her. For a while, it was just Robert Beatty and me, maybe one other here or there. And I was just like, this feels like a terrible burden. But, I didn't care that I just got 4 views that one night and I was being taunted while Hovind was getting 4,000 on Poop's channel. It's just like, you know what? I can sleep at night. And I said, Cindy and I prayed. I said, God, please defend her. Her reputation is being trashed. They're saying horrible things about her that aren't true. She's a Christian woman. Please render justice here. This is just not fair. And slowly, I got to credit you, Cindy. You just kept persevering. And then TTR came along. And then this summer, we weren't always the happiest crew together, but we found Zaire. I think we helped contribute to the process of his discovery, and all this started to come out. And now Hogan's off YouTube, and I felt Cindy got vindicated. When we were on Modern Day Debate, we got 60,000 views. So there,
Yeah, it turns out some people cared about Sal and Cindy after all, huh? Imagine that.
So
I hear you there.
If I got 60,000 views on a video, I would be like ecstatic. I'd be like, ooh.
So, I mean, I know it seems so unseemly for me to gloat, but this isn't really so much between me and Kent Hovind. It was me and Poop had
SFT, yeah. One of the most ironic usernames ever.
Well, it's pretty obvious, and there's been people questioning. They're wondering who it is who are these people that have been calling all these agencies and these police and news reporters? Who's been reaching out and contacting that? It's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She called me. She called me and she called Mark, and we gave her everything we had.
Well, how do you think that the reporter figured out who all these people were to be able to talk to in the first place?
Brett Keene's channel. And Brett, I don't know if you heard me. I did give you credit when I did a video. I said a lot of this began. There was a breakthrough. The whole Zaire thing broke, and it was because you had a relationship with Kent Hovind. He came on your show and incriminated himself. I said, that settled it. People are saying slandering.
I told Cindy a while back, I said a narcissist is someone who just enjoys talking and continue rattling on. I told TTR a long time ago, I said, you just let a person talk. If they're truly lying, if they're truly narcissistic, they'll end up hanging themselves. It happens every time.
And even if they're not narcissistic, it works just the same too. If someone is holding an erroneous worldview, for example, if you let them talk long enough, they'll eventually expose the faults of their worldview, and then you can swoop in later and make a video responding to all that.
So, we don't always agree as a crew, but I'm very happy for the outcome. They're saying, oh, you're gloating over someone's fault. It's like, when a criminal goes to jail, I'm happy.
Gloating over someone's faults. You mean like Kent?
TTOR, by the way, as well as Cindy and Sal, before we get too far ahead, if you look in private chat, I provided you the email of somebody that you may want to get a hold of if you come up with more information or things that you'd like to add. You may recognize the email.
I do.
So Brett, we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I just wanted to give credit where credit was due. You hosted TTO War stuff, and that started it. And then you had you had Kent Hovind on your channel, and it got a lot of what I felt the truth finally started to come out.
Brett, are you saying you're the one who told Kelly to call Mark and I?
I can't put any kind of thing behind that. All those people out there, they find out that there's somebody out there involved with that could cause some issue. I wouldn't know.
Well, honey, just because if they try and pin that on you, that wouldn't work, because I've tried to go to the media and been shut down by most of them. So if she said yes to you, it's not because you're evil, it's because she thought it was a worthy story.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you why this happens. The church wants to make it seem that the church culture in general doesn't. It looks bad when it looks like we've let some bad guys in. It's not good for the donations, and so all these Christian magazines and news outlets, in general, they don't like covering bad stuff. Now, sadly, there are some specialist blogs like Julie Roy's. I don't know why they didn't cover Cindy's story, but now that the Daily Beast has come out, and plus we have these court records, yeah, maybe I hope she'll reconsider. That being said, I've contacted her for my stuff, and she covered my case a little bit, but not much. And it may take some more prodding to get her to cover our case more than she did.
Do you want to be able to talk to this person more?
Were you talking to me, Brett? I'm sorry.
Both you and Cindy, are you wanting the opportunity to be able to talk more with the person?
I talk to Kelly all the time.
All you got to do, I would suggest, is simply do like TTOR does, and archive all the material, make sure it's organized, really easy to be able to understand what's happening. One thing that's really great about TTOR and the way he presents things is he makes sure that you understand who's being talked about. Sometimes when people under a lot of anxiety and stress and they're trying to provide evidence, they forget that the person they're talking to doesn't know who all the people are or what's being actually discussed. They're hearing the action or the consequence that happened, but they're not fully getting that. So TTOR, he's just watch his archive videos if you haven't already. The way he does that is systematic, it's easy to understand, and boom.
Turns out all those years in McMinnville going to school for journalism paid off.
Yes.
But yes, Brett is right. I tried to make it easy for people to understand and also see the information sources for themselves so that they don't have to take my word for it. That's what any good journalist and any good exposer, I guess, would do.
Yeah, I think that one thing that might have helped, I'll put out one last thing about it, is somebody by the name of Chris Jones kept on leaving messages and information and sending all kinds of documentation. And I think the news reporters might have found that interesting.
Yeah.
You mean her article?
You
mean since her article?
We should probably get into it later because I think TTOR wants to do the entropy that Sal originally did. We don't want to get too far away from the beautiful work Sal did. I don't know.
What Sal did was great. But before I ask him my other question that I had, I would just like to do two things. I'd like to plug a couple of really good creationist ministries. Because the thing with Sal and his presentation earlier in this stream is that I was trying to copy what some other popular creationist ministries have done, where they basically have what we're doing now in internet form. They get together, they have a speaker give a presentation on a scientific topic that's related to creationism. And then after that's been done, they have like what we're doing now, like a time to talk about not only the presentation that was shared, but also about other stuff as well. And so what I'd like to do here is present to you two ministries that I've been watching for years that I've found very helpful and informative. One is called the Apologetics Forum of Snohomish County, which is located in Washington. Basically, they're doing what we do tonight, minus all the Q&As in some of the videos. But they cover a wide variety of different topics that I think everyone in this room would find at least some of them interesting, if not all of them. And then the other major one that's a lot more popular is the Northwest Creation Network, which is also located in Washington. They used to host a yearly conference called the Seattle Creation Conference, which I fortunately got to go to the last one they had back in 2016. But they do the same thing as the Apologetics Forum of Snohomish County, just on a bigger scale, and they do it for a longer time, and they have a lot more interesting topics, including UFOs and aliens. So it's a very interesting channel that gets a surprising amount of traffic and attention for, being long-winded presentations. So those are two ministries that do the kind of streams and presentations that we had here tonight on the God TV radio stream. And if you don't see these on the screen and you can't access them quick enough, I'll go in after the stream's over and I'll put links to these ministries in the description box. The other thing that Brett wanted me to potentially bring up was that 2-year-old that has that GoFundMe. Do you want me to play that video, Brett?
Yes, I'd appreciate it. And it would also go along with the conversation. Mr. Sal was talking about a genetic breakdown and all that. And unfortunately, what TTR is about to show you is a perfect example of this. And I'm trying to get support for this baby that's suffering from cancer. So go ahead when you're ready.
All right. And then... Oh, hold on. Let me make sure I clicked share audio first, because it would be embarrassing to not have audio. All right, so you share audio, entire screen. All right, back here. All right.
And gentlemen, my name is Brett Keene from God TV Radio. And today we're going to be showing a GoFundMe, Addie's journey through neuroblastoma. Amanda Fuller is organizing this fundraiser on behalf of Adeline Reckwell. Hi, I am the auntie of Little Miss Adeline. I've created this GoFundMe to support Adeline. She is just 2 years old on her journey of fighting childhood cancer. She is such a happy, smart, cheeky sass queen, but is in for a tough battle. I will paste a link to her Facebook page created by her mom so you can follow her fight. Addie's got this. She's going to kick cancer's ass. If this isn't something you can do right now, I also ask you to please go and donate blood. Addie will need so much to help her kick its ass. It's the least we can do to help her and others. There's a Facebook link. If people want to come over and help her, you just click this. If you don't have any money, then you can click share and you can put a link out there. They're trying to raise at least $10,000. They have $3,250 at this point. Whatever you can do to help out this little girl. Okay. God bless.
All righty. And if you could, Brett, in the private chat, please give me a link to her actual GoFundMe page, because I'm going to want to share that around social media after the stream.
Okay. Yeah, it's in the comments of the video, but I'll grab it for you and make it easier for folks to get to it. All right, let's see. Appreciate you doing it, TTR.
No problemo. And while you're doing that, I did have one other question for Sal regarding his presentation, which seems so forever ago, but you brought up in passing the concept of zDNA, Sal, and I've actually never heard of zDNA, so I was hoping maybe you could explain what exactly zDNA is. If Sal's there.
Oh, he might might have went to the bathroom or grabbing some coffee. I accidentally posted too long of the link, and I cut it down to the shorter one. It's at the bottom of the private chat.
Let's just open that in a new tab and bookmark. Boom. Alrighty. But while we're waiting for, you there, Sal?
Yes, I just returned. I while you're doing that, I had to grab just a little to eat. I actually haven't had dinner yet because.
Did you hear my question?
No, I didn't. By the way, Kevin's biblical discussions. I meant to say greetings. I apologize for not acknowledging you. Nice to see you again, Kevin.
So
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Sal, while you were gone, and I assumed you were still here, I was just going to ask you if you could describe what zDNA is, because I've actually never heard of the concept of zDNA before.
Okay, DNA, it turns out, has different. We normally see it as a double helix in the textbooks, but it can adopt a different conformation than the double helix. It goes into the Z conformation. And it turns out this actually enables the DNA to act a little bit like a computer on top of everything else it does. And it's really complex. It's just insanely complex. So zDNA is chemically it's still the DNA molecule, but it's just kind of like, I'm trying to think, do I have any analogies? Well, you could take a string and knot it, make knots with it, and you can kind of make codes that way, just in terms of the shape. So imagine that DNA has all the letters, but then you can also use the way that it's knotted up or conforming. Knotting up is not really a good word, but the way it is conformed, you can use it as a different way of signaling. So it turns out this is really important, and we're only beginning to find out how it works. So people, this is really just like ultra nerd stuff, but the people who study DNA know this is a big deal. So the importance of this for intelligent design, a lot of times they want to cast people that believe in a creator God as stupid, but there continue to be more and more of us that are very, very well educated, that actually have real science degrees, versus then, kind of fake doctorates from Patriot University. And they're actually in positions of, you would not have known that they're creationists because they're so accomplished. So there was a Nobel Prize winner who became a creationist. He's a famous chemist, Richard Smalley. It turned out James Tour led him to Christ. And James Tour himself is a famous secular scientist, but also a great Christian. And there are just more and more of these. I've watched the creation evolution controversy unfold, and we're seeing kind of a slow turnover of more and more people kind of becoming creationists. I doubt they'll all be creationists, but there's kind of a thawing out of the coldness in academia, because the fact just kind of hit you in the face.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out, is that I've noticed just in my lifetime, in the 9 years almost that I've been a young earth creationist, I've noticed that while evolutionists make up the majority of people in academia, and while they make up the majority of people in general as far as their belief on origins goes, I've noticed that the young earth creationist crowd, while still a minority, it is not as small of a minority as people would like you to believe. And it's a minority that ebbs and flows, but sometimes it grows. And we do see a bit of growth here and there in recent years in that young earth creationist community that I'm a part of.
Yes, and there are a lot of old earth creationists, and that's important because they're not pure evolutionists. They may believe in billions of years, but they think that God worked miraculous acts to bring about creatures, especially humans. So I've asked some of them, because I used to be an old earth creationist. So both Dr. Stanford and I, we were in our own independently, were theistic evolutionists, and then became old earth creationists, and then young earth creationists. And so the old Earth creationist community, I think they have a lot of the important essentials right, that there's a miracle, and therefore there had to be a miracle maker, and there's a creator. So Brett believes in long ages, but I think he believes in creation, and I'm thrilled about that.
Yeah, that is usually the first step towards becoming a young Earth creationist, is having that down first.
Yeah. And you know that I've been a theist for a few years and all that, and you know that I've sought out all kinds of different communities, and just haven't got around to getting me into that yet. But as long as I go for Jesus, all right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the things that I find entertaining and interesting about the Young Earth Creationist ministries that you don't hear about, like Northwest Creation Network, Apologetics Forum of Snohomish County, or the Institute for Creation Science that I used to film presentations for from 2015 to 17. A lot of these people either are accomplished researchers and engineers and scientists like Sal, or they are retired versions of those, or they're people who necessarily aren't those, but they have a high interest in those topics, and they do an insane amount of research to the point where they can pass themselves off as someone like that. It's amazing for me, having watched all these guys on the internet and seen a lot of them in person over the years, that this particular part of the YEC movement is really smart and well read, and they're very humble for the most part. And they don't engage in any of the shenanigans that the more well-known elements of the YEC movement are known for, like the Hovind crowd or the AIG crowd or the ICR crowd or Creation International crowd, the ones you typically hear about on the internet. The ones you don't hear about on the internet, to me, are the most fascinating, because they present so much good information on a wide variety of topics, and you just don't hear a lot of that.
I think that Sal presents a really, really good argument for a young Earth, though. Most of the people that I've listened to who suggest that the Earth is young, they try to go with the whole biblical genealogy thing, but Sal, showing scientific evidence of actual information in our bodies breaking down. And what this tells me is that we couldn't have existed for hundreds of thousands of years under that type of condition of genetic entropy. So that really will make me ponder, Sal, what you've given. You've actually given some information. I'm not trying to say that I'm like devaluing the Bible, but by someone just pointing at a chart and saying, well, this guy was 900 years and this guy and all this, trying to add that up, knowing that there's still translations that are being worked on. There's books that have also been removed out of the Bible. I have a hard time following something that has been admitted and confided in as to being messed with or tampered with in such a way. You understand what I'm getting at? But your information's great.
Yeah, I understand that. And actually, that's one of the things that I really liked about Sal's presentation, is because if we go with a billions of years worldview, genetic entropy becomes a real problem. But if the Earth and universe are only 6,000 years old, like the straightforward and contextual reading of the Bible says, well, then genetic entropy is not as big of a problem, if it's even a problem at all, because we haven't been around long enough for it to become a really serious problem.
There's another thing too, TTR, and you guys didn't bring it up, but it has been something I looked into because I found it fascinating. I was wondering to myself that if life has existed for billions of years or even millions of years, now they claim even during the Cambrian period there was some huge explosion of diversity of life. So if you were to add all that up scientifically with all this, it should be to the point, if this is all true, that the moment me or Cindy or yourself walks out the doorway of our homes, we should be tripping over bones every direction we go, if it actually lasted that long.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the point I actually was trying to make to the Raging Atheist on your show earlier today, is that when you look at that Cambrian explosion and you see all the major, or most of the major animals and animal groups entering the fossil record fully developed as is, with no evidence of any prior evolutionary history. Douglas Futuyima, a diehard evolutionist, said in 1983, Evolution on Trial, I think was his book, that if creationism was true, that the fossil record would look exactly like that. And then Richard Dawkins came along with the Blind Watchmaker a few years later and confirmed that's exactly what the fossil record looks like, and creationists are probably delighted by this.
You know, TTOR and you and Sal were talking about how humanity is getting more dumb and dumb, and I can assure you, being on the earth for 46 years, that is definitely verified. But another thing, a lot of these, I don't want to cause any atheists to cry or get all upset over this, but I think that whenever I'm talking to some of them, they actually believe that scientists are literally digging a hole and pulling out an entire fossil body. They don't realize a lot of these museums are taking little fragments and then they run it through computers and try to come up with an idea of what may have went with it, and they create false parts in order to create their Jurassic Park version of this. They don't realize that. It's like they think it's just all set up pretty waiting for them. They don't realize the aggravation and years that go into this.
And that's one of the things that my creationist friend, Dr. J.D. Mitchell, specializes in as far as his approach to apologetics. He has a special interest in fossils and fossil beds, and that's one of the things he points out too in his book, The Creation Dialogues, is that most fossils are just bits of bones that people find in the ground in like giant piles, like grave piles almost, of just these bones all smashed and jumbled together. And basically it takes a lot of effort and thinking and trying to even make heads or tails of how they could possibly even connect with each other if they're even from the same animal and stuff like that. So Brett's right about that. It's a very messy business in the fossil world.
TTOR, I don't know if you remember, a couple shows back, I was talking with an atheist and he was going into exactly what we're talking about. And I asked him a simple question, and this is something you guys may want to try to throw at atheists when you're talking to them. But I asked, you believe that mutations can cause disabilities and problems, right? And they go, yeah, why? And I said, well, how would you be able to tell the difference between a 1,000,000-year-old handicapped disabled monkey from a transitional fossil? And the person just went absolutely speechless. How would you be able to know? You know, if you found a skull like of a monkey that had hydrocephalus or something like that, or suffered from meningitis, how would you be able to know that that has anything to do with human, or that it wasn't just some kind of messed up ape? You get what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. And plus, I think of the same thing when it comes to like sediment layers and how people date them to, give this age of, long periods of time. Like, for example, when that Mount St. Helens eruption happened in 1980, when people went back and used the dating methods on all those sediment layers that were created by the lava flow, they were coming up with these long ages of like tens of thousands of years to hundreds of thousands of years, and all just these absurdly large numbers. But we know when those layers were formed. They were formed, 43 years ago. So we know that the dating methods are completely wrong and inaccurate when we know the actual origin date of, said sediment layers. But we're supposed to believe that the dating methods work when we don't already know the age of the sediment layers beforehand. You see how that could get kind of weird?
I hear you there, TTOR. We've got so much ammo, we make Rambo happy.
I wanted to just briefly also acknowledge Cindy. Sometimes in these debates, I'm not out to win it. We can actually get information from our opponents that we could use as ammunition later. And Cindy got, she initiated the talk with an email chain with Aaron Ra. And he was the one who admitted there's no effing common ancestor for all proteins. I'm like, dude, you just gave
Which
away
is the opposite of evolution theory. Evolution theory teaches that everything has a single universal common ancestor.
Yeah. So thank you,
when
Cindy.
When he said that, he literally refuted his own worldview.
When it comes to debates and discussions, Sal, I agree with you on that. I feel like if I'm in a debate with someone and I failed to get them to actually rethink their position or even ponder or be open-minded to what I'm talking about, I feel like even if everybody goes, ooh, Brett, you did so great in it, if I wasn't able to get the opponent to think and be able to find some kind of salvation, then we both have lost. That's how I feel about it.
I kind of have a slightly different thought because, there's times where you're going to be debating someone that or at least you're 95% sure that they're not going to change their position no matter what you say. And so when I find myself in that scenario, I mainly think about the people who are watching from the outside and how they're going to potentially view what we're saying. And so a lot of times when I make my videos providing information, I'm just thinking of maybe the audience of someone that we would debate against instead of the person themselves. Because a lot of times those people, the creators we respond to, like the YouTube atheists and whatnot, they're so invested in their position and what they've been saying and doing that it's really unlikely that they're going to change their minds at this point in the game. And so I tend to think about reaching their audience when I make videos like the ones I do.
And that's an excellent point, because most of the time we're going to end up against professional atheists who make a living off of the concept of there no being a god type of deal. So yeah, reach for the audience. That's the way to do it. Don't think for a minute that this person may change their views based upon their materialistic wealth and position, and get the audience.
Mm-hmm. So, does anyone else have any questions for Sal or any other interesting topics they want to bring up here in this last part of the show?
I just found it interesting. I like the way he does this presentation. I like the way he keeps things organized. A lot of people, they should watch folks like TTOR and Mr. Sal and how they present things and organize. A lot of people, they have, unfortunately, that breakdown we were talking about. A lot of folks out there with attention deficit, they can't focus long. So you got to present it easy, simple for even an unevolved monkey to be able to understand, and you got it going.
Well,
you mean like Samson?
Well, I want to thank you for the kind words, because this is the lecture that I gave is actually one that I also give to university professors.
Well, Sal, I remember when you used to come on the show and you'd practice some of your stuff, and I was just really impressed. Everybody was rooting for you, Sal.
Thanks.
Got some really good ideas.
So, well, thank you. Well, see, the practice helped me move along. And so that what you got to see today was kind of some of the stuff that you saw today was the stuff that I practiced on your channel. And I went back and cleaned it up and did it a few times over. So thank you.
Sal, there is one question I see here in the comments that I forgot to bring up to you earlier. It'll be your last question to answer before we transition to the end. This person said, I have a question. The Bible has certain verses such as they were, so that shall they be. Ecclesiastes 1:9. In the realm of genetic sciences, is regeneration also possible?
Regeneration of the genome can only happen through a miracle of God. In fact, I will tell you, John Sanford, even though he's a genetic engineer, people said, well, why don't we just re-engineer the human genome and then we'll be fine? And he said, the complexity of doing that's going to be tremendously difficult. It also will raise a lot of ethical concerns, because a living human you can't do that with. Maybe you could try to genetically engineer a new human, but look at all the things, all the you're going to have so many failures. You're going to be, for every maybe slightly improved human, you could have hundreds of fetuses you're going to abort, or who, if they're born, they will have horrendous birth defects. So can we get regeneration of the genome? Only a miracle of God. That being said, if you have a functioning genome, you actually do see regeneration of your cells. So like when you get a cut, you can get healed. And so what has happened is, in certain animals, and this is very mysterious, they can regenerate their limbs and a lot of things. I would say that after the fall, this is just a theological speculation, we lost a lot of abilities, including the ability to regenerate our limbs. We do know there are creatures that are immortal. I mean, immortal in the sense they don't age. Now, if they get killed by an accident or starvation, they die. But they will live, as far as we can tell, they will live forever. Also, there is these quirks of cells that we have kept of people that have died, but the cells are immortal. They're called immortalized cell lines. So there are all these strange things that hint that we did have the capability at one time to regenerate a lot of things. And it's no longer with us. It looks like something switched it off. And man does not live longer than 120 years.
Yepers.
What creature lives forever, Sal?
Hydra. A
What's that?
hydra. It's being studied intensely because we're trying to understand the aging process, and it's mysterious. So look up the hydra.
Okay. How do we know that it's been here since the beginning and never died?
Yeah. So just type the word hydra immortal, and you'll get a lot of articles. And so this also does tell me, I think we really did have a fall, and man was designed to live forever. And the little hints of this.
You mean like the Bible says? What?
Yeah, like what the Bible says. By the way, it's really, thanks for joining, Cindy. I thought this would be too late. I was a pleasant surprise when I found out you joined.
I gave her some warning ahead of time.
I honestly, I didn't think I was going to have time for this, but since Justin invited me in the middle of the week, I said I have to find a way to make time for him, because he came to your defense 2 weeks ago, and I really appreciated what he did.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, you're a stand-up guy, Justin. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Because the night before, Cindy called, and I'm like, you hardly ever call me, this time, and she was just practically crying. She said, Joanna's saying all these awful things and then making all these videos about me, and you came through. And then a week later, Hovind's YouTube channels were shut down, and I said, God, thank you, because this is really hurting Cindy's feelings.
The irony of that timing, I will admit, is pretty darn hilarious. It's almost like God has a sense of humor. Like, we do that big old collab where it's you, me, and Mark Stoney, and Cindy, and we have the response to all the slander that Kent and Joanna were saying in that one stream. And then literally a week later, that Daily Beast article comes out. In between the two, Matt Powell leaves DAL. And then after that article comes out from the Daily Beast, Kent's got his 2 primary channels terminated from YouTube. I mean, just that series of events over the last couple of weeks has been quite hilarious to watch from the outside. It almost feels like a judgment of God of sorts,
Oh, TTR, it's not also just about the article and all the other stuff. There was one other thing too. For some reason, some of the folks are missing, and a lot of atheists are all over this. This is one thing that really angered them. Remember, whenever I questioned Kent about the homosexuality stuff and Matt Powell?
Yeah.
Oh, that set the atheist community
right.
on fire.
You're right. He basically shot himself on that.
Mm-hmm.
Fill me in on this. Now you got my interest. This is the most interesting thing.
If you want my version of it, Sal, just go to my YouTube channel and you will see both a video responding to Kent Hovind on that topic and one responding to Matt Powell on that topic after Matt left Brett Keane a nasty voice message.
Yeah, Matt Powell ended up leaving me a message on my phone because he was angry at me because I went against him over the homosexuality. Matt Powell thinks that the government should execute homosexuals, and I basically rebuked him in a Brett Keane type fashion. He did not like that, so he called me up and called them FAGGOTS. He said they bang animals, everything that you can think of. It was horrible, and I put that out there. And then
He said they were pedophiles.
And he also said that Brett was a pedo enabler, and that people like Brett were responsible for everything that's wrong in America and the world right now.
And I responded to him. I responded to him with, "That's fascinating, being that you're hanging out down there with a bunch of pedophiles there, sir." and that really set him into commotion.
Hello.
Right.
So then Kent Hovind ended up coming on that last show. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to see it. It's on the radio. You can actually watch it here. TTOR seen it, and he actually reviewed it. Great video, by the way, TTR. So what happens is I said to Kent, I said, do you agree with Matt Powell? And Kent went into this big old thing about how homosexuals are. They lay with animals. They're like sewage, parasites, viruses, and that set the atheist community on fire. That's all that was needed. I just kind of sat back and I was like, man, this guy, why don't I just throw him another shovel so he can just dig the rest of his grave?
Kind of like what you were saying earlier, just let him talk.
Yeah. You should watch it. I'm like, oh, really? Wow. So
I did.
That video, though, where he went on to Dino Adventureland after his main channel got shut down, and he started talking about, oh, yeah, we're just going to buy back those subscribers. And I know atheists are going to say we're buying subs, but those subs were ours, yo.
yeah, they were bought and paid for. We own those things. Yeah. So, but then he made another mistake. I don't know if you told Sal about this and Cindy, but he did something that YouTube will not even give you a strike over. They'll just instantly remove your channel. He incited his audience to go out flagging a bunch of people and targeting folks. And that was an instant, you're gone. Bye-bye, Dinosaur Adventure.
And that was 2 minutes after he had alleged that we had false flagged his channel to get it taken down.
There you go.
By the way, Brett, I wanted to thank you. I haven't visited your channel very much, but just in light of the Daily Beast article, I just checked out. And so what you just said about YouTube's restriction, thank you very much, because I'm thinking about moving to another platform, because I do feel uncomfortable that, they could just shut everything down that I have. And I could make an innocent mistake. I could make an innocent mistake, or I could have a guest that says something and it gets me in trouble. I just don't want to deal with that. I mean, I'll follow the rules as best as I can, but when you're talking about the strikes that some of you got, and just like, it really wasn't your fault, and just like, that's scary.
Speaking of getting strikes, I'm not going to say what it was now, but I actually got one last night while I was about to get in bed, and I have a video about it tomorrow that's going to be on all of my non-YouTube channels. So it'll be on JoshU TV, it'll be on BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble. It'll be on my own site, Quarter. So yeah, I'm going to talk about how important all these alternatives are in that video, as well as explain the strike I got. But yeah, Sal, I can help you, and Brett can too. We can hook you up with all kinds of YouTube alternatives. In fact, the one that Brett uses right now, called Odyssey, your channel is big enough that if you sync your YouTube channel up to Odyssey, every time you upload a video, and manually upload a video, that is, it will automatically upload to your Odyssey channel.
Yeah, it connects your channel. It's going to get all your old videos as well. It's going to preserve your entire channel. I'd given that information, Cindy. It is true that it's possible to lose a YouTube channel because some other idiot comes up and does something ignorant. That's one of the reasons why I get these folks that run in and they say the N-word or scream on top of their lungs or say something terrible, because they know that it can cause an issue.
And that's why I get on so many different video sharing sites. I'm on so many sites right now. In addition to the ones I mentioned, I'm also on Roku, actually, as well. I'm on so many different sites. I'm even on a television platform, technically speaking, that if anything happens to my YouTube channel, it literally doesn't matter, because I'm on all these other sites, some of which get a lot of traffic anyway. So yeah, there's no issue with censorship when you're on a bunch of different sites.
So I wanted to thank you guys for that.
Thank you.
It's all good. And also, don't forget to let people know that you got the corridor.
Yep. Let me put that on screen really quick as part of our exit queue. I
have a question. Brett was saying, if you tell your audience to false flag, that's a no tolerance, where they pull you off.
Yeah.
Right? But
YouTube,
Kent did that to me from the beginning. He's done that to me multiple times.
And that's what I pointed out in my video about that. Yeah, is that he did that to you last year, and then he was doing it to all of us, when he got his original YouTube channel taken down. But like I showed in my video, if you go to YouTube's actual terms of service, there's a section that says you're not allowed to misuse their flagging system. So yeah, when he did that, that was a complete and utter violation of their TOS that resulted in insta-ban.
So when he did that last year, they just didn't catch it?
Yeah, probably.
You got to realize that there's billions of people on YouTube, and YouTube is not able to just be able to go through everything and find it. You have to kind of, have a little birdie tell YouTube about that kind of stuff and direct them to it.
Yeah. But anyway, let me screen share Quarter since Brett brought it up. Just got to do the magic. All right. Got it. And this is Quarter. This is my open source alt tech alternative to YouTube that I started last year. I think it's about 6 or 8 months old now at this point. Actually, I can figure it out if I go to my TTOR channel. Yeah, it's 8 months old. But it's a lot like YouTube. It has a lot of the same features. You have HD video uploads, and you have public playlists, easy to use comment moderation system. You have custom thumbnails and tags, and you can also do things that you can't do on YouTube, like you can create video chat rooms where you can do what we're doing now on StreamYards, but you can also live stream to your channel from them, and you can also use it just for general video conferencing. And on Quarter, if you upload videos and your videos get views, you start to earn a currency that I call Quarter Bucks, where if you accumulate enough Quarter Bucks, you can actually use them to promote individual videos of yours or your entire channel on the main page of the site, thus giving you an incentive to actually share your video out and get views on it, because then you can promote yourself on the front page on a fairly consistent basis, and you don't even have to use real money.
Honey, does it have the same feature as Odyssey where you can sync to YouTube and it'll suck all your YouTubes off?
Unfortunately, no, but YouTube DL is part of the upload import page. So like if you upload a video to YouTube, after it uploads, you can copy and paste the link to your video and you can import it directly to your Quarter channel, and then it will appear on your channel after a little bit of time. Here, let me log in and show you what that looks like.
You just have to do it manually.
Yeah, but it's only, copy and pasting a link and pressing a button. It's not terribly complicated because that import process will pull your thumbnail and your description box and all that stuff.
When you have 100 and some videos, the prospect of transferring them all is kind of daunting.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you just have to have a real drive to do it. I could probably do it for you if you really wanted me to, because I can.
I would pay you.
Yeah, because if you have me access your account, which I can do as the head admin, I could totally log into your account and then do all that importing for you, because I can just copy and paste a link 100 times, no big deal.
I've been meaning to ask you something. Whenever I go to import, it doesn't give me any kind of indication. It shows this little bar moving, but can I go away from the browser or close out of it and it still takes care of it, or do I got to sit there the whole time?
Yeah, once a video shows up in the sharing queue on the right, like where you see my mouse is, you can leave the page at that point and it will still upload to your channel. But if you were to manually upload it, you would have to wait until that green bar finishes processing on the left-hand side of the screen. And then once that's done, it will appear on the sharing queue, and then you can leave that page.
All right, I'll put up some more videos. And I didn't realize that because it didn't give me any indication. So I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to sit here for 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of different encoding servers that are attached to my site right now. They all have their own specific URL. So one thing I'm going to do here soon on Quarter, specifically for the Quarter Creators channel, is I'm going to make a video showing how to upload videos, and I'm going to list the links of all of the different encoding servers that are currently attached to the site in the description box. So that way, if anyone on Quarter ever has trouble trying to upload a video on a server, they can just try another one until they find one that works or is not crowded.
I got a ton of bookmarks. Can you post a link into the private chat?
Yeah, with link to what?
The quarter. I got so many things in a folder right now over the last year that I'm having a hard time finding it.
So here's the import video. So from file is where you would manually upload a video. Import video is where you would take like a YouTube link, for example. You would just pick a category that's available. You'd paste the link right here in the box, and then you would just click share. And then after a little bit, the video would show up in the sharing queue and it would start to process. And it's just that easy.
Do you have a limit on how long the video can be?
No, but generally speaking, the smaller your video file is, the quicker it will process and upload.
Yeah.
So as long as you find a way to minimize your file size before you import, like if you were manually uploading, it should be fine. Yeah, because you can get some pretty long videos uploaded fairly quickly if the file size is small enough, depending upon the resolution and whether or not it's been compressed. But that's the kind of stuff that me and Brett could give you more details on, outside of the stream.
Odyssey won't do more than an hour. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, but I know you're already on Odyssey, Cindy, because every time you upload, your videos show up there. So
yeah,
you already got one source covered. But I will not lie. It would be nice to have you on Quarter. I could use some more Christian content.
The Odyssey doesn't have a lot of my videos because a lot of my videos are more than an hour.
Oh, really? Is there a limit on that, Brett? Because I wasn't aware Odyssey had a limit on how long the videos that you could import could be.
My very first video is 4 hours, which that's bad, but.
Anyway.
Yeah,
that sounds like something you'd have to manually upload, because I have a video that's over 4 hours long on my Quarter channel, and I was able to manually upload it just fine. I just had to make sure I reduced the file size. There's a lovely piece of software called Handbrake that's very useful for compressing your video files into much smaller sizes without reducing the resolution. That's something we could hook you up with if you need it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it offline.
Hope I didn't miss anything. My son just called. He's going to be stopping by.
Okay. Well, we were going to ask you about Odyssey because Cindy said that she was unable to import some of her videos to Odyssey from her YouTube channel because they were too long. And I was going to ask you if you were aware of a limitation of video length on Odyssey imports.
Yeah, I think there's like a 4 hour, 5 hour limit and all that. Because YouTube ended up changing their you see how they do the tabs now where you got a shorts tab and a live.
Yeah.
So they changed the links, and Odyssey still needs to work out being able to pick up live shows. So that stinks.
Maybe you have a higher limit than me because you have more subscribers, but for my number of subscribers, they won't take over an hour or two.
Sadly, one of the things about Odyssey is that although it's a good quality site, you get your videos on it, there's not very many subscribers and views going.
Yeah, it's hard to get any views and subs on there unless you're already popular on another site and you've been promoting your Odyssey channel. Although some of my videos on Odyssey have actually gotten a fair number of views, and I actually got 63 followers on there, even though I've never promoted it. So I found that to be cool. But now Quarter is my own baby because at the end of the day, I don't trust anyone to uphold my freedom of speech. So I just got my tech friend Josh to hook me up with his website hosting company. And he actually has his own version of Quarter called Joshu TV that uses the same script. And yeah, he helped me set this whole thing up. And I know he's not going to screw me over like other people would. So I got a pretty stable website here that's never going to censor us for wrongthink.
I wondered if Josh Who TV was you. Oh yeah, I get confused because Josh and Justin both start with J. Okay,
yeah, that's his baby. He is a tech, not guru, but like he's a tech expert as far as web development goes. Like he is one of the coolest people that I've ever met as far as, tech stuff goes. And I think Brett has met him a couple of times before, so I think he can testify to that too.
Oh, T2R.
Yeah.
I put a link in the private chat for you. You and I starred on the Raging Atheist channel. Apparently, he grabbed the show where we're on it and everything, and Darth Dawkins. So it's there. He doesn't have anything negative to say about us, but he definitely had that whole conversation where Darth was getting all over him.
That was so weird and annoying.
The atheist community thought it was funny how I dealt with Darth. I like Darth, I really do, but he is very dominant and controlling whenever he comes into a show.
Yeah, he doesn't have a good sense of flow. He basically has an agenda, and he's not like willing to like actually hear someone out entirely and then react. Because I think he could do that if he wanted to. It's just wasn't him today. But anyway,
I've seen. I know a lot of Christians when they see Darth in action. I've had people say, "Brad, why are you so patient with him and so cool?" And I said, "Look, man, you ain't seen what happens to Darth as well as Christian Hillbilly over on Discord. Those atheists try to tear you apart over on that program. So then they come to YouTube and they're still pissed off at the world for their treatment, and that's what we see happen."
All right, so
Mark, can you see what Sal's asking? Sal logged himself out by accident.
Whoops. I did not see that. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Sal. I was looking at this other screen the whole time. Didn't realize that had happened. All right.
Well, I just wanted to say goodbye. Because I'm running out of fuel. Really great to see you all. Brett, it's been a long time. Cindy, it was a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see you. I actually didn't expect to be doing anything Saturday. I feel kind of bad because I canceled out on Cindy. I said, we're not going to do molecular biology or cell biology. And here I am. I feel like I'm cheating on her by hanging out with you.
You did.
She
I had
caught
no
me.
idea. Yeah, I had no idea about any of that. That's funny.
Oh, there was something I was wanting to let Cindy know. Cindy, as you know, I gave you permission to grab my videos. It'd be easier for you instead of having to record your screen or do what you're doing. If you go to Odyssey, under any video that you're wanting, just click on the video, look under it, and there's a download button, and you can get it just as it is and edit it that way, and then you'll have really, really clean, nice videos then.
What?
Yeah.
I noticed YouTube has a download button, but
they do, but it costs money. Odyssey, I don't
Okay.
think charges you, do they?
No, I've made it to where anybody can. All I ask is that anybody has permission to download my stuff, and they can re-upload it. But what they can't do is don't edit me out of context. Don't make it look like I'm a manatee singing about being a homosexual or something like some people do.
Oh,
dang it. I really wanted to do that.
In the private chat, I put the link to Quarter, Cindy. And I think Sal's actually already on Quarter. He just hasn't used his account there.
Just a technical thing. I had a little bit of music in that recording of John Sanford. Don't worry. That is Creative Commons licensed music.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering why my stream was still going after you let that fly.
No, that's public domain. I made sure that that piece of music. Brett raised the concern earlier, and I just wanted to tie that loose end. So I'm planning to, if it's all right with you, TTOR, to download this and upload it on my channel for Darwin Day.
When's
Right.
The
Darwin Day?
Super Bowl.
I plan on putting this video on my Quarter channel, and on Quarter you can actually download the videos directly for free in different resolutions. So like if the max resolution of a video is 1080p, you can download it in any resolution from 1080p and below, or if it's only like 480p, you can download it as that.
All right.
So yeah, I'll if that makes it easier for you to download, I will you can check that out later.
Well, guys, thank you so much, and thanks for hosting TTR. And Brett, thanks for joining. And Cindy, great to see you. Maybe we'll do our cell biology recording in 2 weeks when I get back from the Discovery Institute.
No worries, honey. No worries.
All righty. Take care. Good night. God bless you.
Good
Take
night.
care.
God bless you.
God bless you.
All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about, or do we want to start transitioning out?
Whatever you guys want to do.
I think it's 1:45.
Okay, so I think we'll end the show here. But before I start the end credits, I just want to promote a couple of channels on the screen just so that people can see more of our guests here. And let me just finish the share. So, of course, Brett Keane is the originator of God TV Radio, and you can see his YouTube channel right here on the screen with the handle at Brett Keane, all lowercase. Sal, our guest speaker, goes by the username Evidence and Reasons, which is literally also his handle, capital E Evidence, lowercase and capital R Reasons, all one word with no spaces. And then, of course, Cindy Lincoln, who just cracked 900 subscribers today, and her handle is also Cindy Lincoln, all lowercase. And
Are you kidding? I cracked 900?
yeah, I think when you hit 1,000, you can do memberships. Is that the case, Brett?
I don't even know what that is. Last I looked, it was 888.
Memberships on YouTube is like a donation system where people can pay you a certain amount of money and they get access to certain perks that you give them.
So
It's
you
a
get
way to like financially.
monetization.
I'm
You'll be able
not-
to make money off of your channel, and also
No,
you'll
thank
get
you.
super chats.
I don't
Yeah.
want that.
Okay, just letting you know that. You don't need to. But anyway, that's Cindy's channel, and that's Sal's, and that's Brett's. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube Live, you know where my channel is. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and cue up the end credits. But if you want to talk to me after the credits and stream is over, Brett, I'm going to be on here for a little bit more. Because I know we have a live stream that we're planning to do next week that I know we need to talk about a little bit. So it'd be nice to do that after the show.
Thanks for the download tip too, Odyssey, about Odyssey, Brett. Thank you.
It's all good.
And with that, we bid you all good night.
I do.